Welcome to the C-Suite Series on Channelchek. I'm Michael Kopinski, the Director of Research at Noble Capital Markets. Noble is the source of all equity research on Channelchek and the source for small and microcap companies. In this program, we're featuring one-stop systems. Stock symbol is OSS. Noble's 25-year veteran analyst, Joe Gomes, will interview David Raun, the President and CEO of One Stop Systems. In this interview, investors will get a better sense of what AI on the fly means, what is edge computing, and why the recent management changes at the company may bring better predictability to this company. Before I turn it over to Joe, I encourage you to stick around for closing comments when Joe and I will discuss the key takeaways in this interview. Finally, if you'd like to get Joe's research on one-stop systems, on channelchek.com, type in the ticker OSS in the search box in the top left section of the site. With that, take it away, Joe.
Thank you, Michael. With us today is David Raun, CEO of One Stop Systems. I know it's still early on the West Coast, so good morning, David, and thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Good morning, Joe. Looking forward to it.
So let's dive right in. One Stop Systems describes itself as specializing in high-performance computing on the edge. For those in the audience that are not familiar with edge computing, can you share with them what this means and a little bit about this market?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about history, we had all these different computer architectures. We ultimately ended up with a PC. And so we had all the computing power right at our fingertips. Then we went to networking, and then we went to the cloud or the data center. And that's the dominant way to deliver apps, content, everything today. But there's a part of the market that is out on the edge. And even when you think about 4G, 5G, or even the speed of light, there's always some delay. So the edge market basically is a application that is far from the data center in a remote location, and it needs to sensor information, do compute on it, and act on it. And it cannot necessarily wait, or it's not efficient to use the data center in that process. So that's a little bit about edge computing. The other thing that's unique about it is that unlike an air-conditioned data center, where you put these racks in, there's no moisture, there's no dust out on the edge. You've got harsh environments, anything from the back of a trunk of a car to the dust of the desert.
Interesting. So that kind of leads to the company. One of their catchphrases in the past has been AI on the fly. And it sounds like you were describing a lot of that. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page. And you can give us a little bit more. What else, when you describe AI on the fly, are you talking about? And what else is special about one-stop systems in this space of edge computing?
Yeah, so basically, if you look at edge computing and what we do, we basically, going back to my last comment, bring the power of the data center to the edge. So we're focused on the highest performance part of it. So that's computing, that is storage, that's networking, and that's I/O. Bringing it out there as if you were in the as if you needed the power of the data center remotely. And we put it in ruggedized type products that can handle the harsh environments and unique form factors. Not everybody can handle a big box that would be in a data center. So that's our focus, is that part of the market. If you look at the the different parts of the market, there's also anything from the IoT device, for example, on your refrigerator. This is a simple device, all the way up to military aircraft, for example, like we participate. We participate on that very high end. AI on the fly is that idea. You have artificial intelligence on the fly, out in the field, with the power of the data center behind you. And that's what our customers do.
Just for the audience, maybe you could give some real life examples of what the OSS products do in various types of applications. You mentioned defense. I think one is autonomous vehicles. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah, so first let's talk about autonomous vehicles. Let's think about that. First, that could be an automobile, that could be a truck, a bus, be watercraft. There's really endless uses for that kind of technology. And that's an ideal one because think of although that automobile of the future is going to be communicating with the data center constantly to get updates and to refine algorithms for AI, there's no way it can go to a data center and communicate back quickly enough. For example, if a person walks in front of a car, that's a great example. It has to react as quick as possible with the highest performing type products, which is what we supply. So that's one example. The second is you mentioned military. So that could be in an airplane, that could be in a tank, it could be in a helicopter. In that situation, most of the military applications are one of two things. One is threat detection. So if you're in an aircraft or a tank and you have an enemy that's about to take action, you surely do not have time to react and go back to the data center. So you need the most computing, storage, IO, all of that right at the remote location taking action. The other part for military would be on the offense. If you're taking offensive action, you would also need that computing power. One of the dynamics of that, think of it, you can't go to Dell or IBM and just buy a standard server and put it in the back of a tank. It needs to be able to withstand that environment, and it's probably in a very unique form factor. Then you go into, think about the MAX 737, the fact that's been restricted, some of the airplanes that have disappeared. There's a big focus in the airline industry on safety. And if you think about if an airplane is going to take additional action or communicate in a better way, it doesn't have the luxury to communicate, if it even has a connection, with a data center. So those are different examples. And then the other extreme is, although you haven't been to one probably in a while, a sporting event or a concert, the light shows, LED shows and all that take a lot of performance on the spot, and they have to be very ruggedized because the same guys that carry the amplifiers in and out of the truck are the same ones that's going to drop that box with a server in it. So they have to be able to withstand that.
That sounds like some pretty unique, powerful applications. Was wondering if you might be able to give us a little bit on the competitive environment. Who, if any other people, do you compete against? How fast is the market growing? Maybe what size of the market is. That would be appreciated.
Yeah, as far as the market, first of all, we believe the edge computing part is somewhere in the $20 to $24 billion range. What we try to do is we focus on something we call specialized, which means that we're working closely with the customers, the type of customers we're talking about where they have some special needs. And that's about a $3 billion market. So lots of room for growth. The real situation here is that we have to create very defensible products with very high value propositions, which we're working on to grow our size within that. Currently, we compete with other smaller companies on one spectrum, and then larger companies, some of the ones I mentioned earlier, in some cases where they don't need as much specialization.
You were recently named CEO of One Stop. Can you provide us with a little of your background, especially as to how your experiences relates to what One Stop is doing today, and what changes or improvements have been implemented under your leadership at One Stop?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, so my background is 25. I've been in high tech my entire career. The last 25 years has been at the senior level and board level. That includes semiconductors, software, telecom, hardware, IP, a number of other markets. My career started in sales. I quickly moved into marketing. I did a lot of time there. I helped a number of companies in that space and ultimately ended up as CEO of PLX Technology, which is a public company, where we took PCI Express, which is one of the main technologies in the foundation of OSS, and became the dominant supplier at 70% share, competing against much larger companies. We were ultimately acquired by Broadcom/Avago in 2014. So that as a basis, first of all, I sold to One Stop. I also sold to companies that they acquired, and I sold to all the customers that we're selling at One Stop today. So I'm very familiar with the marketplace. I'm very familiar with companies this size and larger. and I know what it takes to take it to the next level in a public environment. So I'm very excited about it, and I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I was on the board of directors since 2016. We elected to make a change at the CEO position earlier this year. In February, I took over an interim role, worked with a team, and we started right in. I'm really proud of the team. They did an awesome job. What we accomplished since then is the following. First of all, we did a significant expense reduction. What we did is basically focus on keeping the best people, highly motivate them. We made changes. We reduced some spending throughout, and we integrated CDI fully, which was a company we had acquired, and we were planning to do it by the end of the year, but we accelerated that. And that resulted in about 2.5 to 3 million on an annual savings, which a company our size, that's big. So I'm really proud of the team for doing that. In fact, the team had already put a lot of this plan in place, but needed the support of the CEO to implement it. So they did a lot of the heavy lifting before I got there. Second was a reorg. We eliminated one of the executive positions. We created a different one with a big focus in areas I thought we were a little weak. One of them was product marketing. So what's that all about? That's really about doing a better job moving forward with how we define products, the markets we focus on, creating the dominance that I'm used to in markets, and driving them forward. So we've made a lot of progress in that space. The other areas with COVID facing, and I was one that just didn't believe this thing was going to go away quickly, along with the management team. So we wanted to bring in some more capital. So we brought in an additional 4 million just to protect the company and shareholders. So we did all those things. We're really happy with that, and now it's time to get to real work.
That's great. Might want to come back to a couple of those, but I wanted to touch a little bit further, dig a little bit deeper into the PCI Express. That's a product that One Stop is a leader in, especially in the new Gen 4. I was wondering if you, with your background, you could again explain a little bit more what PCI Express is and why it is so important, and why it is such an exciting opportunity for the company.
Yeah, so PCI Express, everybody is more familiar, I think, with Ethernet. And Ethernet, think of all the different types of Ethernet, is really the connection between computers. PCI Express, for the most part, is the connection between the chips on a motherboard or inside a box. It's very high speed. There's a lot of challenges with it. When we talk about PCI Express Gen 4, that means it's the 4th generation. The performance has doubled every time. And where we create our value is that the signal integrity issues, compliance issues are so tight that if you don't have great expertise in this area like One Stop has, you really can't deliver the type of products that we deliver. PCI Express is one of the lowest latencies, which really, if you think about communication and delay, you want to keep your latency low. So one of the specialties is we can take a box, put lots of stuff in there to create a very high performance system. And we also take the PCI Express outside the box to another box rather than going over a slower, higher latency Ethernet connection. So that's really a little bit about PCI Express and what we do, and why our customers call us, especially when they need something that needs PCI Express.
Great. Back to the COVID pandemic for a minute. Maybe you could explain a little bit more of how that has impacted One Stop. I know one of your large customers, as you mentioned, is involved in doing a lot of the concerts and sporting event videos. And how has that impacted them, and the resulting impact onto One Stop, and how are you guys dealing with that today?
Yeah, I mean, that's the million-dollar question, right, for everybody. So first of all, go through a couple things. One, on the expense reductions and stuff, COVID created a sense of urgency to do it, but we would have done it anyway because it was the right thing to do, and the other changes. So a lot of people ask that. As far as the marketplace, a couple things. First of all, on the our manufacturing, We're fortunate because we're considered a critical supplier to the infrastructure for government programs. So we never had to shut down. Our facility, which is in Escondido, which is in the San Diego, California area, continued to operate throughout this and will continue. Fortunately, we've had no cases on the production line, and we've been able to keep it going. So that's a big one, keeping people employed and keeping the product shipping to all our customers. The second was the supply. The supply, we had tightening here and there, but for the most part, the management team and their teams did an excellent job of securing the product and making sure we could still ship. Sure, it impacted things. We had to ship things later in the quarter. People had to work harder than the quarter. And we may have taken a hit here and there, but for the most part, we didn't do too bad in that area and haven't. The third area is the customers, which you asked about. And I'll get a little more specific there. You know, they range anything from somebody that doesn't seem impacted to somebody that's, you know, the program's a little bit delayed, but still planning to do it, to kind of the severe one, which is the one you mentioned. You know, you can imagine if you're selling into concerts, sporting Olympics, that they did later impact your business. And so that's a tough one, but, you know, we stay in close contact. Our CFO, John, and myself keep in close contact with our counterparts there on a very frequent basis. We work closely with them. And what's exciting about them, they're working really hard to apply that technology and do a pivot into the virtual world. And that might even be stronger for them, but that'll take some time to materialize. And we look forward to continuing to work with them on that. So we're just working through it.
Be interesting to see how that ends up. Can you tell us a little bit about the recent changes to the board of directors since you were named CEO?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm really pleased with the changes of the board. I think it's the best board I've seen at One Stop Systems. On July 1st, we added 3 new independent board members all at once. They bring skills in public board experience, finance, capital markets, enterprise computing, also IoT and the edge. Very independent. And that brings us our board to 7 members. 6 of them are independent. The only one that is not is myself because of this role. And the other thing that's nice is in doing that, we're compliant with California gender diversity recommendations, not only for this year, but for years ahead, because our board is 4 male and 3 female today. Great group of people, and I'm enjoying working with them.
Excellent. It certainly looks like you and your team have made several changes since you became CEO. What's next for One Stop Systems?
Yeah, so I'm proud of what the team's done. It's really them, and I'm fortunate and feel blessed to be able to work with them. Really, you know, if you look at what we did, we got our cost basis down. We did a reorg to focus more on the markets. We got the capital structure in place. We adjusted the board to have a more talented team to work with us. So now it's really focused on how are we going to increase our market position? How do we increase our value proposition with customers? As I mentioned earlier, you know, my desire and belief is that you need to be focused on particular segments of a market and figure out a way to be number one. If you're number one, you're going to be able to get the higher margins, you're going to have the higher growth rates, and that ripples down to higher shareholder value and all the good things that go along with that. So again, that's where we're focused right now, is to more refine that better and execute to that.
Great. Is there anything else, David, that we haven't covered yet that you would like the audience to know about One Stop Systems?
I think when you look at One Stop Systems, I think we've covered most of the things. I would just say, you know, this is a company that, you know, has been unpredictable in the stock market, but we've made a lot of change, and it's going to take us some time, but you know, it's building blocks. We've built the foundation. Now we need to start building the walls, and that's what we're going to do. And so we just encourage you, whether you're an investor today or you might be in the future, just, you know, keep an eye on us and see what happens over the coming months, quarters, and years. I think it's going to be an exciting time for One Stop.
Well, David, we covered a lot of ground today and got significant insight into what exactly One Stop Systems does, its markets and opportunities. We appreciate you taking the time to do this CEO interview and look forward to meeting in person once conditions improve. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks for the time. Much appreciated.
Joe, this is a really interesting company. I always find computing and technology a little bit over my head sometimes, so it really kind of brought it down to more my level of understanding. But I did have a couple of questions. Where is the biggest growth opportunity for this company? Is it in the defense area, or is it in more futuristic applications like autonomous cars that he mentioned?
I think you would have to honestly say that it's in both areas. You know, the Defense Department is making a big push into artificial intelligence. You know, part of what the Defense Department is always looking for is improvements in size, weight, power. And a firm like One Stop, that's exactly what they're doing. They can take an existing application, make it smaller, more powerful, more ruggedized to allow more decisions and faster in the field. And that translates right over into these futuristic applications like autonomous vehicles. If you have an autonomous car, you can't, be picking up the data, sending it to a data center to get analyzed, and then sending those responses back to the car. Things happen too quickly. With the one-stop products, all of that functionality is brought right down into the car level so that it's a seamless, just like there is a person operating the car thinking immediately about whatever various inputs are coming into the car. So the company has significant growth opportunities in what will be very large markets.
Gotcha. And David alluded to some of the unpredictability of the company in the past. I was wondering if you can give us some background on what happened in the past and why investors that may have been familiar with the company in the past might want to take a second look at this point.
Sure. I think what David really was talking about there is, the company was a private company, came public, and the same person who founded the company was still the CEO as when it became public. And I think that he had a more difficult transition from that private viewpoint of running a company and public. And they had made a number of acquisitions that were somewhat outside the scope of the company in the past. But even more importantly, that there was the integration of those companies was taking longer than I think the investors were really looking at. And David's come in. They've got the one fully integrated immediately. And they've really sharpened the pencils and around the entire company in order to help take out some of the variability of the firm.
Well, thanks, Joe, for bringing him to us. It was really a fascinating interview. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.